Today on the Agamaga podcast, we're discussing how to approach studying A Course in Miracles. And I want to give you some practical tips to get you going and to keep you going. So let's get started. The Course is such a beautiful and powerful teaching. And, many people starting out struggle with it at first. But just keep in mind that A Course in Miracles, it's a mind training program that takes us from the thought system of the ego to the thought system of the Holy Spirit. And it's literally a 180-degree shift in perception. So almost everything that we're currently experiencing, is the making of the ego. So making that kind of shift, doing a 180 degree or perceiving things completely different it obviously seems hard, but any spiritual practice, requires consistency and overcoming our doubts and our uncertainties. But the good thing is you can just be aware that the Course is here to help you. But the ego, it doesn't want this help and will actively work against it. The ego, it's been made to reject our reawakening and for us to hide in this world, in this illusion. And the ego finds all of this, any spiritual teaching, it finds as a threat. So it will create resistance, and to know that that's just natural and it's not a problem. But this reminds me of this old Seinfeld episode when George Costanza, he realizes, he's looking at his life and he realizes that everything in his life is the opposite of what he wants. And then he gets this idea that in order to get the life he wants, he'll have to do the opposite of his natural impulses. And so the whole episode is, normally I would do this, but I'm going to do this instead, to really have the life that he really wants. So in a way that, that's what we have to assume about our life here right now, is that the life we're experiencing, it's a life of perceived separation. And in order to have a different experience, we're going to have to choose a different thought system. We need to choose the opposite. It's that shift from the thought system of the ego to the thought system of the Holy Spirit. And for me, after working with the Course for about 25 years, I really believe that the Course was intentionally designed. It was given to us in order to create a certain degree of dissonance, in order to shake the ego thought system. So my suggestion is to assume that everything that you may struggle with when working with the Course really is the doing of the ego. Don't take it personally. Don't think it has anything to do with you. It is the ego. And therefore, it's a good thing, because it means you're in the process of beginning to undo the ego. So one other thing, some people, they feel they get tripped up by this self-referential logic of the Course, which can seem, dizzyingly circular at times. Because as I've said before, the entire Course can be really encapsulated in a section or a paragraph or a sentence, and really in a single word. So it's important to note that the Course, it doesn't provide like a linear approach to learning. It's just extremely experiential. And this is really different from how we're used to learning when we approach, an intellectual subject. The mind, or the ego mind, it wants things clearly laid out in an A to Z progression, step 1, step 2, step 3. And we also want really concrete definitions and answers. Even to the terms used in this book, we're going to want that. But this teaching is more symbolic, metaphoric, and holistic. It's almost like, when we were learning to walk, we didn't learn to walk because someone said put one foot in front of the other. We got up, we fell down, got up, fell down, and we learned how to manage this body that we were in. And so that's more the experiential type of learning that this Course, is like, what it's like, or the way to think about it when approaching it. So now I'll give you an example. the title of this entire body of work is called A Course in Miracles. So, I can imagine we'd like a really concrete understanding of, well, what is a miracle? And we all have our historical ideas, these preconceived ideas of, the definition of a miracle, what a miracle would look like. And we get these from spiritual teachings and, I don't know, movies, films, all these other things. In the course, it dedicates the first 4 pages of the entire text just describing the principles of miracles. It describes the quality of miracles, but nowhere in any of these books will you ever find a clearly defined statement of, a miracle is X or Y. And, for some people, this can cause a certain sort of mental tension, which, at some point, if you just can relax, if you can learn to just relax around it, around the entire teaching, and just remain open and curious, a deeper understanding, will naturally emerge because we already have this understanding. We already know all of this. We've just forgotten it. We've merely forgotten it. More precisely, we've created this entire matrix, this entire creation, all these ideas we currently have, which we hold true, and those are what are preventing us from remembering the truth about who we are, what we are. Jesus tells us in the Course, when you heal, you are remembering the laws of God and forgetting the laws of the ego. So really, we need to forget all that we think we know. So, and that reminds me of this Buddhist teaching story. It's a teaching story. It's a traditional teaching story, and I'll just, tell you a little variation of it. So one day, a meditation student comes for tea with his meditation master to discuss all the troubles he's having understanding the teachings and practice. And this, this may as well be, probably it's really an advanced student. It's not a beginner. So the tea service is laid out, and the master, he goes and he fills both cups, and the master's just sitting there enjoying his tea. All the while, the student is discussing his dilemma, all his problems with his mind and the problems with the teachings. And at one point, the master takes the teapot and refills his cup. And then he begins, pouring tea in the student's cup to the point of overflow, and the student's just going on and on and on, and the tea is, it's overrunning the saucer and it's running over the table, and then it gets to the floor. And then the student, kind of wakes up and realizes what's happening and starts screaming, "Stop, master! Can't you see my cup is already full?" And the master says, "Your mind is like this cup. You must first empty your cup of the old tea in order to receive the new tea." So, this story is told to us to let us know that in order to receive new ideas, we must first let go of all the ideas we currently cling to. So that, new information can enter. And the terms used in the Course have a certain definition, which is slightly different from how we're used to hearing them or understanding them. Who we are exactly, what we are exactly, who is Jesus, what is the Holy Spirit, what is the Christ, what is the ego. And these podcasts will refresh your understanding, of what the Course means by these. But I just want to give you my top practical tips to help you on your studies of the Course. So first, before starting out with the workbook lessons, really try to understand, or not try to, it's important to understand the first 4 to 5 chapters of the text. The entire teaching basically iterates around these this base language and these concepts. And I'll be reading these and discussing these in detail on the Agamaga podcast. And 2, bookmark the introductions to the text, the workbook, and the manual for teachers. And, before reading each of these 5 chapters, I'd suggest just to reread these introductions. They're very, very short. I think the combined total, of all 3 introductions is maybe 3 pages. So it's quick and easy to do, and this will set the view of the teaching. So, read the introductions, read chapter 1, read the introductions, read chapter 2, etc. And my tip three would be, take a look at the manual for teachers. There are discussion there. There's like this discussion of core concepts along with a section in the end called the clarification of terms. And, it was years before I ever looked at that manual for teachers. And once I did, I thought, well, that might have been helpful to review from time to time. you know so read these and or listen to my podcast. I'm going to be doing readings and discussions of these terms as well. So the fourth tip is that, in the workbook's broken into two parts. There's part one and part two. And part two, the entire part two section, how it's structured is it introduces 14 topics. So it'll introduce a topic, then there'll be a 10-day meditation, 10 days of different meditations on that topic. Well, each of those 14 topics are really interesting, really powerful, really helpful. So, if you ever get interested, read through those 14 concepts while you're reading the text. Well, at any time, but if you're reading the text, they're really helpful in shaping your understanding of the material. Fifth is, if at any point you're feeling confused when reading the text, just keep reading. Keep reading into the next paragraph. Sometimes, our mind is very active and we have a question or we start thinking about it and we're trying to understand what it's trying to say. And your question many times is answered right in the next paragraph. So try to keep reading it without having to understand it. That's really important. It's speaking to the right part of your mind, which already understands and knows what is being read. Your goal is just to be willing to read the material. Many times for me, I get the experience that, it's not talking to the ego self. It's not talking to my small s self. It's really talking to my large S self, my capital self, our true self. And the goal is to invite that consciousness, that awareness of who and what we really are to inhabit more deeply into our presence, into our awareness. And that is what I've experienced with working with the text is it's really for that process. So another thing is a common experience that happens when doing any form of spiritual development is the onset of drowsiness. You can call it the spirit of drowsiness, that's trying to, get in the way of your learning, your awakening. Never feel bad about that. If you become tired or drowsy listening to the podcast or doing the materials, this at best, this could be the result of just learning new things. It's trying for the mind and your mind is stretching. And so that can make you tired. At worst, it's the ego trying to resist and know that that's okay. Both are good signs. So just take a break. And when you return to reading, my suggestion is, start over at the beginning of the section you were reading, before you got tired. Don't start right where you fell off or the paragraph. All the sections are short. Just go back to the beginning of the section and read through again. So, as I said earlier, the Course, it's trying to help you, but the ego does not want this help. The ego has been made to reject reawakening. The ego finds this all a threat. Everything about learning and awakening and spiritual practice, it finds as a threat. And it is a threat to the ego. But not to worry, because we're not alone on our journey. We're not alone on our journey to reawakening, and our success is guaranteed. And it's not something we can do alone. And the good news is we're not alone. The greatest force in the universe, the only force in the universe that is true, is behind us. And the number of helpers given us is legion. And they are of one mind. We all share the same mind. And the Holy Spirit's been given us to do the healing. We don't do the healing. The Holy Spirit heals us. And it's his job, not yours. Our job, your job, is just to have the willingness, a little bit of willingness, and to turn your mind over to him for healing. One phrase I really like is that what you pay attention to, you become conscious of. So, this is an invitation to begin to have a dialogue with Jesus and the Holy Spirit and invite them into your consciousness. Invite them to heal your mind. Start paying attention and become conscious of their presence. I just want to thank you for joining us today. We hope this episode gives you the inspiration to continue your reawakening journey. So please like this video so it can reach others and leave us a comment or question. Until next time, may you continue to be blessed by life and may you experience the peace, joy, and love which sustains you. Remember, you're exactly where you need to be. The teacher is within you. Your life is your path, and teach only love, for that is what you are.